Cowboys coming off that dramatic win, and it was in L.A. against the Chargers. Imagine where the feelings would be at 0-2 despite 2 road games to start the year. It's hard to win in the National Football League. Philadelphia coming up on Monday night. Joined by John Machota, theathletic.com, covers the Cowboys. John, any win is good in the NFL. I don't care who it's against. But can you imagine the mood, even though you stack them all together, get to about mid to late November, find out where you are, if they had dropped that one too, 2 gut-wrenching losses? Is the mood just completely different right now?
Oh, yeah, especially considering if they had lost that game, we all know what probably would have happened. It was would have been a missed field goal from 56 yards, and they go to overtime and lose, and there would just be they're second-guessing today, even after a win, but there would have been even more on why would you not run at least another play to try and get a little bit closer than 56 yards for your kicker that struggled mightily the week before. So, yeah, no, it would be a completely different mood. But, yeah, a win is a win. You take it, and you move on to one of your biggest games of the year, a Monday night game against a division rival, and you feel a lot better. I mean, even though, yeah, you're 1-1, you're dealing with some injuries, you lose to Marcus Lawrence, Lyle Collins is out. A win has a way of healing some of that stuff, and just getting a little extra pep behind the scenes, and just in talking to some of the guys today after they did a little walkthrough, it's a lot more positive than I think things would have been if they were 0-2 and would have blown that game in overtime.
John, are we supposed to believe Mike McCarthy's explanation for the clock issue at the end of the game? There's not a coach on his headset going, "Hey, Mike, you may want to go." I mean, I know Tony Pollard complicated things, but still.
Yeah, it's difficult to completely think that you can go from 28 seconds to 4 seconds because there are some clock issues at this brand new SoFi Stadium. I guess anything is possible. But yeah, that was pretty interesting to hear that after the game, and then in the following day's news conference. You just don't think that would happen at the NFL level, but apparently it does. It just a real head scratching moment there because, even with only one timeout, I just felt like you could run another play, obviously a pass play. And if it's incomplete, yeah, the clock stops there, but okay, then you kick it at 22 seconds. I'm fine with giving them the ball back, kicking off to them, and them having 15 seconds to go, 70, 80 yards. I think that because of the way things went down in Tampa Bay, I think that factored into their game planning that at the end they just wanted to make sure that they had the ball last. Like when they were going to kick this field goal, it was going to have zeros on the clock, and they got that. I just felt like maybe that could have come from like 40 or 46 yards as opposed to 56.
John, there were a lot of expectations coming into this season for Micah Parsons, just based off of all the buzz that was building up. Fair to say he's lived up to those and maybe even surpassed those in some ways.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And then the other thing is that he just sticks out like a sore thumb in Dallas because of the fact that they're just – when's the last time there was a guy like that on their defense? I mean, you almost got to really go back to – especially with today, DeMarcus Ware being one of the, named as a finalist for the Hall of Fame, which should be a shock to no one. But, that's kind of where it's at, where you have a game-changing type defender like that. Yeah, it's real early. It's only 2 games. But what he's shown, his ability to play on the edge, to play linebacker, to play in coverage, to get off of blocks, there just doesn't look to be a major weakness in his game, and he's still so young. But I think that there's another key thing that has to be factored in here, and that's Dan Quinn. You also need a defensive coordinator with a vision of using this player in this variety of ways. You can't just assume that every single defensive coordinator would do the things that Dan has done with him, or even given him the kind of, parameters to even allow him to do things like that, being so young. And so Dan Quinn seems to have this vision that he's going to be like a Swiss Army knife for them, and that sometimes they can rush him, sometimes they can drop back. And from week to week, opposing teams aren't going to know, and this is going to be our key chip because he can ruin a game for another team's offense. And so the combination of what Mike has shown with what Dan Quinn's shown through these first 2 games is what really should have Cowboys fans excited.
All right, but this is all a setup, the CeeDee Lamb running the triple option, because we've now seen him in kind of an option, a look, and then also that play at the half, which was there. Yeah. Was it San Diego? Who ran Kansas City? Remember they ran that play at the halftime?
Well, Tyreek Hill just kept going.
Darted through everybody. And Cowboys almost got that one done, but I love what I see, and I do believe at times, not that there weren't any changes in what they did offensively, but you can actually see the personality of Kellen Moore and even maybe Mike McCarthy with what they're trying to do in different ways to get the ball, and it's just not some kind of vanilla offense.
Oh, for sure. And then just even comparing the game plans from week 1 to week 2, they just didn't even look the same. People talk about all the success that Tony Pollard had in this last game against the Chargers, and I don't know if he would have had that same success used in that exact same role against Tampa just because of their front seven and what they're able to do. But that was the perfect, the way that they used him on jet sweeps and just they got him outside running, got him in space was perfect for that Chargers defense. And so you see that from week 1 to week 2 that they have success in offense, and it's done in a variety of ways. It makes you think, well, this is just good. They can keep doing this stuff. And you know what? Maybe there's some weeks where there is a heavy dose of Tony Pollard, and then maybe there's other weeks where they don't use him quite as much because it's like Tampa Bay where they preferred Zeke to be in there to help with pass protection and things like that because they're going against a great front, and Dak's going to need some extra time. But, yeah, there's a lot of things to be excited about with just the game planning. Like I mentioned with Dan Quinn, same thing with Kellen Moore, that you're just like, not to say that, no, actually I'm going to say it was just too vanilla in previous seasons for far too long. And you're just seeing a lot more pre-snap motion. You're seeing more variety. You're seeing, as you mentioned, CeeDee Lamb lined up as a running back. You're seeing plays where, Tyron Smith is lined up as a receiver because they're going to throw a screen, and so he's out there to block. They're just a lot of things to put out on tape that opponents have to worry about, that even if they aren't maybe resulting in a big play, that's just another thing that teams have to game plan for, and you have to like seeing that.
Certain things happen. Jason Garrett, was appropriate as the offensive coordinator for a time. And then it got to the point where, he needed to step back and let Scott Linehan. And then it got to be where Scott Linehan was just, it was just no creativity. They weren't changing. Kellen Moore has seemingly learned from that and said, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. The true superpower has to be adapting to each opponent, which Jason Garrett never really wanted to do. It was just, here's what we're going to do. If they stop it, good on them. If we beat them, good on us.
Absolutely, and I think that comes a little bit from the success they had in the 90s. Obviously, he was up close and personal with all of that, and that worked in the 90s because, how many teams even had a roster that could even hang with them? There was only a few that were even on their level. So if they could execute whatever they wanted to do, and they executed it at the highest level, nobody was going to be able to stop them. In the NFL today, there isn't that type of dominance. Like, there are a certain couple of teams that are obviously have some better players, maybe coached a little bit better. But from week to week, and you've just seen it through these first 2 weeks of the NFL, there's so many ups and downs. There's just not the same dominance. And so you have to be a team that adapts. And, yeah, they're doing that now better than they did then. But also let me say that they're more a veteran on the offensive side of the ball than they were under Jason Garrett and Scott Linehan. Jason Garrett and Scott Linehan were bringing along a young Dak Prescott, along Ezekiel Elliott. Maybe they were too conservative with him, but there's also part of me that understands why they were doing that, because they were bringing along these young guys, whereas now the offense can be a little bit more, you can put more on the plate of a Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott in this, because you have Amari Cooper and Dalton Schultz and Blake Jarwin and all these guys, Michael Gallup, that have been around for several years now, and in this system that you can expand it. So, Kellen Moore's in a great situation right now, and he's making the most of it, certainly through these first 2 games.
What'd you think of the way that Terrence Steele performed when called upon?
I was really surprised. It comes back to is there's only so much. As much as we'd like to say of what we see at practice during, training camp and the off season, you really don't know when it comes to like in the trenches like that, because there's only so much those guys can do in that practice setting, especially in today's NFL. So to see him in that game, I would have been impressed if he was going against whatever is, take Pro Football Focus's worst rated starting defensive end. But to do what he did against Joey Bosa, it was very impressive. And it kind of put together the stuff that I'd been hearing behind the scenes all off season about how, like, no, just wait, Terrence Steele, he's really spent a lot of time in the weight room. He's been committed. I think you guys are going to see a better player than what you saw in week 1. And I kept hearing that from people in the organization. And you see him in that first week and you're like, you know what? I didn't really want to believe it, because I thought, some people are just blowing smoke, but you've seen some serious growth there. And man, if he can continue to grow and continue to head in the right direction, like, just think of the possibilities there for a guy that was an undrafted rookie free agent who obviously took a lot of lumps last year. I don't know if any player was more criticized on the Cowboys roster than he was for some of his play. And maybe those were some growing pains, and maybe this is, this season is the fruits of his labor. I don't know, but I mean, that's a heck of a first game. I don't think anybody was expecting that when they heard Lyle Collins was about to be suspended for 5 games.
Yeah, and again, it's what he did this game, what he does next game. But if they can build on that, because last year, obviously, when they had to plug in, it didn't work out for most everybody. Did they feed Zach Martin like broken glass and nails when he couldn't play because of that COVID? Because it seemed like from the beginning he was frothing at the mouth, and they went right behind him almost immediately.
Yeah, I definitely got the sense last week that, he was really frustrated that he had to miss that season opener. It's a game that he was obviously looking forward to. It's the season opener. It's the Bucs. He wants to be out there for every game, but especially that matchup. So I think that fed into it. But watching that game over again, the Chargers game, especially on the all-22, seeing some different angles from behind the line of scrimmage, like what stood out to me is kind of just, I think Zach Martin is about, they can put him up with almost anybody in the NFL in terms of like a guy that's taken for granted. Like you just expect it. Like this guy is going to like probably go to the Hall of Fame. He's going to be in the Ring of Honor. And you're just kind of like, yeah, I kind of feel like we just took that for granted because he was like that like almost every year. Like there's just very rare that you come out of a game and go, yeah, man, Zach Martin just wasn't right today. Like he didn't have a good game at all. I mean, it's happened maybe a few times. Probably all of them. It's because he was dealing with an injury. But man, when he's right and he's healthy, clearly like he is right now, I don't know if there's a better guard in the league. And he certainly showed it in that game. And I kind of compare it almost a little bit to like, obviously he's not on the same level as Zach Martin, but that little run there for about 3 or 4, maybe 5 years with Dan Bailey being such an automatic kicker. I feel like sometimes fans take that for granted. And then obviously over the last few years, you see, it is tough to find a guy that can just knock down those kicks as consistently as Dan did. I think that the true appreciation for Zach Martin might not come until after his career, and they possibly go through a revolving door of just off guards that aren't anything close to the way he is. So one particular play in that game is just the way I can't remember if it was. I think it might have been Bosa got by Terrence Steele, and Zach goes from blocking his defensive tackle with one arm, and then tries to block Joey Bosa with the other arm, and was able to slow him up enough for Dak to get the pass off. Just crazy stuff when you see that.
So, John, are they looking at losing another player but gaining one back? Looks like Randy Gregory has been cleared, but Keanu Neal now dealing with the COVID-19 protocols. Is that correct?
Yeah, so a source told me that he didn't test positive, Keanu Neal. He's a close contact. And so for you to be a close contact and go on the COVID-19 list, that's for unvaccinated players. So if you're unvaccinated or in the process of being vaccinated, and you're a close contact, then you are in that protocol for it's 5 days, and you have to test positive. I believe it's every day. And so technically he still could play Monday night because the 5 days would be up, and so Monday he would be eligible to return. The question you run into is just like, well, then he's going to obviously, do a lot during the week on his own because you want him to be, ready to go for that game because he's not going to be able to be around the team. Now he is a veteran player, and he is their linebacker that's played the most linebacker snaps these first 2 games. So I'm sure Dan Quinn trusts him to be ready for that game. But it's important to note that this isn't, I've already seen it on Twitter that people think that this is you automatically determine that he's out because that's what happened with Zach and that's what happened with Randy Gregory and other players. But that's not the same because those guys actually had symptoms and they tested positive. That's not the case with Keanu Neal. So there still is a chance that he can play. But if he can't, though, to answer your question, I think that you see less Micah Parsons at defensive end. And he goes back to playing more linebacker, and then you just see more Jalen Smith, more Leighton Vander Esch, maybe even a little bit of Jabril Cox. If Keanu Neal can play, even with Randy Gregory back, I still think that you're going to see Micah Parsons at that left defensive end spot. That's where he had the most success against the Chargers. That probably had something to do with Rashawn Slater being on the other side, and he is just an absolute animal. So I think that there's still a lot of game planning to be done here. And to be honest with you, to sum all of this up, I think that that's incredibly interesting because I don't think that we would be having these conversations about the Cowboys defense 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. The fact that they've been so multiple that we're actually wondering from week to week what they're doing, I think that's a huge step for their defense.
All right, John, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Cowboys 1-1 home against Philly coming up on Monday Night Football. So we appreciate John Machota, theathletic.com. Couple of notes. On Brink